The rain had always been a source of fear in the village of Koranza. Not because it came with floods or storms, but because of a belief that had been passed down from generation to generation. The elders told stories of a child born during a heavy rain, a child who would either bring great blessings or immense misfortune to the land. They said the child's fate would be tied to the rain, and if that child ever stepped out into the rain after reaching a certain age, something terrible would happen, something that could change the course of the entire village. It was a belief that Kofi's parents, Kwame and Akojua, knew all too well. Kwame and Akojua had been trying for years to have a child. Every year, they prayed at the shrine, made sacrifices, and waited. But nothing happened. They had almost given up hope when, one evening, after a heavy rainfall, Akojua felt the familiar pains of labor. It wasn't the first time it had rained heavily during her pregnancy, but this time, it was different. The rain seemed to fall harder, almost like it was waiting for something. Akojua's water broke as the skies darkened, and the wind picked up. The midwife, Oma, arrived just in time. She had heard the stories. She knew what this child's birth could mean. She had been part of the old rituals as a young woman, and she knew that the rain, the timing of it, could not be ignored. Kwame, Oma said quietly, as she prepared for the birth, the child you are about to have. You must remember the old ways. The old promise. Kwame didn't understand, but he trusted Oma. He had seen the way the elders looked at his wife during her pregnancy. They had been distant, as if they were waiting for something to happen. He had always brushed it off as superstition. But now, watching his wife groan in pain, he felt a deep, unsettling sense of dread. Akojua screamed as Kofi was born, and the storm outside seemed to intensify, the wind howling and the rain pouring in sheets. The baby's first cry was drowned out by the thunder, but Oma's face went pale as she held Kofi in her arms. There it is, she whispered. The sign. What do you mean, Oma? Kwame asked, his voice trembling. The child is marked, she said gravely. The covenant is fulfilled. This child, he is the one. The rain will be his fate. As Kofi grew older, his parents became more and more protective of him. They kept him inside during storms, always warning him that the rain was dangerous, that it could harm him in ways he couldn't understand. They didn't explain why, they just told him it was for his own safety. By the time Kofi was 7, he had started to ask questions. His friends would run outside during light rain, splashing in puddles and laughing. But Kofi would always stay inside, watching with longing eyes. He didn't understand why the rain seemed to call to him. Why his legs itched with the desire to run out and join the others. But every time he got close to the door, his mother's voice would stop him. Kofi, not today. You don't understand, but it's not safe for you. The fear in her voice unsettled him, but he didn't argue. He had learned not to. There was something in her eyes that made him feel like the rain was more than just water. It was as if the rain itself was a force, something to be feared, something he could never touch. But there were times, when the thunder roared and the lightning flashed, that Kofi would sit by the window, his face pressed against the glass, longing to be out there. To feel the rain on his skin. There was a part of him that believed if he just stepped outside, everything would be fine. But his parents had told him too many times that it wasn't. And so, he stayed inside, his heart heavy with questions he didn't know how to ask. As Kofi entered his teenage years, he started to grow restless. The rain came more often now, and each time it fell, his desire to step outside grew stronger. He couldn't explain it, he just felt like there was something waiting for him, something he was meant to discover. One evening, as the sky darkened and the first drops of rain began to fall, Kofi stood by the window again, staring out into the storm. His heart raced with anticipation. This time, he couldn't ignore the pull. Mom, Dad, I'm going outside, he said, his voice calm but firm. His mother looked up from the fire, her face pale as she saw the determination in his eyes. Kofi, don't do this, she whispered, rushing toward him. You don't know what it will mean if you step out in the rain. Please. But Kofi shook his head. I need to know, Mom. I can't keep living like this. He pushed the door open before either of them could stop him. The rain poured down in torrents, soaking him instantly. He didn't care. He took a deep breath, feeling the coolness of the water against his skin. For a moment, everything was quiet. The rain washed over him, and for the first time in his life, Kofi felt at peace. It was as if the storm was part of him, as if it had always been there. He closed his eyes, listening to the sound of the rain, feeling the rhythm of it in his bones. But then, a sharp cry from his mother broke the silence. "Kofi," she screamed. "Get back inside, now." Kofi's eyes snapped open. His mother stood at the door, her face twisted in fear. But it wasn't just fear, it was something else. Something darker. He turned and looked at her, his heart pounding. "What's going to happen? Why are you so scared?" His father, who had been standing quietly behind his wife, stepped forward. His face was grim, and his voice was low. "Kofi, it's time you knew the truth." Akosua wiped away tears as she spoke. "When you were born, it rained like this, and the elders told us that if you ever stepped outside into the rain, you would awaken something inside you. Something powerful. Something that could either save or destroy us." Kofi's chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" Kwame looked at him, his eyes filled with regret. "The rain is a sign, Kofi. The elders said you were born for something special. But there's a curse. A child born in the rain is destined to bring either great prosperity or ruin to the land. And if you step outside, if you embrace the rain, there's no telling what will happen." Kofi stared at his parents in disbelief. "But why didn't you tell me before? Why didn't you let me live my life?" Akosua broke down in tears, her shoulders shaking. "We were trying to protect you, Kofi. We thought if you never went outside, you would never awaken whatever it is that's inside you." But Kofi didn't want to hear anymore. He felt the rain around him, cold and relentless, but he felt something else too, something warm, something alive, rising within him. For the first time, he understood. The rain wasn't just water. It was his destiny. The rain continued to fall through the night, and Kofi stood there, feeling the weight of his parents' words. He had always known there was something different about him. Something that set him apart from the other children in the village. But he never imagined it would be tied to something as mysterious as the rain. His heart ached as he looked at his parents. They were scared, but he could see the love in their eyes. They had done everything they could to protect him. But now, Kofi had to make a choice. He could stay inside, live a life of safety and fear, never knowing what could have been. Or he could step out into the rain and face whatever it was that had been waiting for him all these years. The storm raged around him, the wind howling, the rain falling harder than ever. But Kofi stood tall. He wasn't afraid anymore. The rain was not his enemy. It was part of him. And so, with one last glance at his parents, Kofi took a deep breath and stepped forward into the rain. He didn't know what the future would hold. But he was ready to face it. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so we can bring you more amazing stories.